Now, you're not going to believe this, but I think I've just stumbled onto a secret XRP pattern that could skyrocket the price by 777%. And yes, you did indeed hear that right, 777%. So I found a chart that hints XRP might blast into the 2-digit price range pretty soon. And it sent me down a rabbit hole, right? And get this, the last 2 times that this pattern showed up, XRP went absolutely wild. So of course I'm thinking, is this real or am I crazy? Well, stick with me because here there is a twist in this story that had me double checking the charts at 2 a.m. Now, let me kind of set the scene, right? A few days ago, I'm sipping away on my coffee, scrolling through crypto Twitter, or X, or whatever we call it now, and I see this market analyst who goes by the name of 𝗗𝗶𝘀𝗰𝗋 boldly claiming that the chart doesn't lie. Now, he's kind of talking about XRP and saying that it might be on the verge of a massive move, like hitting $28 kind of massive. So $28 per XRP. Now, my first reaction was, poof. Okay, buddy, that sounds like every kind of moon boy's fantasy. But just because at that moment XRP was struggling at around $3 mark, right? But I mean, XRP hadn't even held above $3 consistently just yet. In fact, it had just peaked, at around $3.35 on August 14th. And then it slid back under $3 by August 18th. Not exactly moon material, right? But 𝗗𝗗𝗀 was so confident, saying there's actually this historical chart pattern that is repeating itself. And I'm a bit of a sucker for a good old mystery, so I just had to investigate. I thought if there is even a grain of truth here, it could be huge for us XRP holders. Plus I do love a good crypto detective story over my morning coffee. So I dug on in. I pulled up the monthly chart that 𝗗𝗗𝗀 shared, and instantly I kind of feel this weird sense of deja vu, like I've seen this movie before. Now, according to him, right, XRP's price history, it's all, at least over the kind of last 8 years or so, shows a specific distance. It's kind of like XRP climbs into this range, something that he calls the multi-year ascending channel, fancy way of saying long-term uptrend support zone. And after that, XRP trends to the 2 kind of big rallies in succession, right? Now, each kind of topping out at a higher price. So 2 peaks, right? Back to back in one single cycle, separated by a kind of chill period. And apparently, this actually could already have happened twice before. Now, by now, my skeptical brain is arguing with my hopeful brain. And I'm just doing the kind of glued to the screen kind of thing, because for me, I have a flashback to the 2017 crypto boom, right? Now, if you weren't actually around then, there's no worries here, right? I was, and it was insane. XRP was, trading for mere pennies in early 2017, right? We're talking about 5 cents or less. Now, basically, couch cushion money, right? Now, suddenly, XRP takes off like a rocket. And in May of 2017, it hit around 39 cents, and that was the first peak of that cycle. Now, I remember it quite vividly because I nearly spat out my coffee, right? When I first saw that kind of tiny stack of XRP actually turn into a not so tiny stack anymore. Now, a lot of us thought, wow, 40 cents, right? That's incredible. Maybe that's it for this year. But the market took a breath. XRP went into consolidation mode for a little while. Nothing too, exciting for a solid 6 months, but people, kind of shrugged it off, got distracted by Bitcoin and Ethereum stealing the spotlight. But then, and this part is where I imagine dramatic movie music kicking on in, XRP, right, said, hold my beer, right? In late 2017, as this kind of whole crypto market went bonkers, XRP started climbing again with an absolute vengeance. And by January of 2018, it actually reached an all-time high of just over $3.30 or $3.86, depending on which one you believe. Absolutely mind-blowing, right? Now, that was the second peak. So the first peak was 40 cents and the second peak was $3 roughly, right? An 8-month gap between them as well. And the second one was, exponentially higher, right? If you kind of plotted that chart on a chart, it kind of looked like two mountains, right? With a kind of little valley of 6-month kind of boredom in the middle. And back then, it kind of felt like XRP was kind of taking us on a bit of a roller coaster. A slow climb, a quick thrill, a pause, and then an even crazier climb. And I remember, right, the euphoria and frankly, the disbelief in the community at the time. People were remortgaging houses to buy XRP at $3. Not that I would recommend that, holy cow, definitely not. But that's the kind of mania that the second spike actually induced. Now, fast forward to the next cycle, 2020 to 2021. And this is where this one was kind of different in some ways, right? The SEC lawsuit, anyone remember that, right? But eGrag's pattern showed up again, at least in the price action, right? XRP had been in the kind of a static kind of boring range through late 2018 to 2019's bear market. Pretty depressing time for many people, right, price-wise anyway. But by late 2020, XRP had kind of sunk back down to its 20 to 30 cent levels. And by November 2020 had rolled around, something had sparked. Call it excitement over the bull market, call it hopeful anticipation that Ripple might beat the SEC. That was the lawsuit news that was coming out, ironically, right? Now, the XRP climbed into that ascending channel zone around 50 cents, specifically November of 2020, right? This was when Flare was doing a snapshot for the token, right, FLR. Now, XRP was roughly around 50 cents, half a buck, and that was, the first time that it had actually woken up in a little while, right? Then boom, by late November, it had rallied hard to 79 cents, right? The first peak of that cycle around the end of 2020. I remember that run up too. It was like kind of walking, or at least waking, I guess, a sleeping giant, right? Everyone was kind of getting bullish over it until the SEC dropped their lawsuit bomb in December 2020. Talk about pouring cold water on the party. Now, XRP's price tanked briefly. Many exchanges even delisted it. It was chaos. But still, by early 2021, XRP found its footing again, right? It kind of consolidated, kind of like a zigzagged around the dollar level and something like that for a few months or so while Bitcoin and the whole market were going crazy. Then it kind of just sprang, right? Sprang to life in spring of 2021. XRP had its second rally, and by April of 2021, it had reached about $1.96, almost $2. That was the second peak for that cycle. Not an astronomical as 2018's $3.30-ish, or $3.80, right? The amounts, but considering all of the legal baggage at the time, $1.96 kind of felt like a big win. The gap between the first peak, 79 cents, and the second peak, $1.96, was shorter. It was roughly 5 months, at least apart. So if 2017's pattern took 8 months between peaks, the 2021's mini version took 5 months. The idea is the same thought though, and the same kind of throughput and throughput. XRP touched that ascending channel, right, around 50 cents in this case, and then had a solid rally to that local high, chilled out, for a little bit, understandably so given the lawsuit drama, right, and then, a big bang, another surge to a higher high. Right, now at this point in my late night research, I'm grinning because I see what eGrag is actually saying here. 2 distinct cycles, a few years apart, showing the 2 mountain peaks, right? That pattern, right? The 2 mountain peaks pattern. And here we are in 2025, possibly living through the very third installment of this saga. It's kind of like XRP's trilogy then, Return of the Rally. So here's what's been happening recently then. After the 2021 peak, we went into a brutal crypto winter. XRP, like everything else, drifted down for a couple of years. By 2024, sentiment was a bit meh, right? Price even kind of meh-ish, right? XRP was kind of just chilling in the 50-cent range for months in 2024, making long-time holders, bang their heads against the wall. But come early November 2024, something had shifted. It was election season in the United States, and whether by coincidence or not, crypto started gaining momentum. Maybe people were speculating that a new administration could be good for crypto, or maybe that it was just time for the market cycle to turn. Who knows? All I know is that my portfolio finally started looking alive again. XRP kind of surged out of the 50 cents kind of, range, climbing through late November into December, and by January 2025, lo and behold, XRP hit roughly $3.40 as its first major peak of the cycle. It was like deja vu. Suddenly, everyone was talking about XRP again. I remember because our Discord server was buzzing like crazy. Shameless plug, of course, I know, but it's a great spot to kind of freak out or celebrate with fellow crypto nerds. Now, when things at least get a little bit wild. Anyway, right, $3.40 was huge. It was basically a new high we just hadn't seen since 2018 glory days. Cue the celebratory memes and a fair share of I told you so from diehard XRP fans, right? But, of course, after any thrill ride, you've got to catch your breath. So, after January's peak, XRP didn't hold $3 for very long. It pulled back to around the kind of $2 by kind of maybe February or that kind of area, and it kind of bounced between $2 and $2.50 for a little while. Honestly, the last 6 months, spring and summer of 2025, have been relatively quiet. XRP has been consolidating, that fancy word that analysts use to basically means not doing much, just moving sideways, right? Everyone getting a little bit bored here. So we saw it dip, we saw it climb back up near the $3 level, but nothing explosive until we get into August 2025. And XRP is making another attempt to break the $3 convincingly, right? We recently had it poke its head over $3 again. And this is where eGrag's pattern analysis gets really spicy. He noted that from the first peak, $3.40 in January, it's now been 8 months, which, if I recall, was the same duration between the peaks in 2017. In other words, if history is truly repeating itself, or at least rhyming, we could see, or at least be on the cusp of, that second giant rally being right now, or at least right about now. And according to eGrag, that rally, that second peak this cycle, could happen as soon as September 2025. That's literally next month. So when I realized that, I swear I got goosebumps, right? I honestly, right, it's kind of one thing to think, okay, maybe in a few years XRP might go up, but here we are with a guy that's effectively just saying, no, it might happen in a matter of weeks. Cycle, your cycle is kind of, looking for that second peak, and you can circle your calendars. Now, you're probably wondering, how high are we actually talking about here for this potential second peak? Well, eGrag's chart, and I've been kind of eyeballing it every day like a bit of a treasure map, predicts roughly 777% increase from the kind of consolidation zone. So 777%. Those are kind of gains that turn $1,000 into $7,770, right? It sounds absurd, I know, right? But you can apply 777% to around the $3 area, roughly where XRP has been hovering, and you land in that high $20 somethings, right? Now, eGrag specifically pinpointed that we could see $28.16 as a target. So let's just round that to $28 for sanity's sake here. So $28 per XRP. When I first saw that, I did actually have to rub my eyes and make sure that I wasn't seeing the kind of old 2017 hype post or something bonkers, because $28 is nearly 10 times higher than XRP's price today, or maybe even previous all-time high of around $3.30, a little less than 10x. So we're talking about XRP's potentially doing what few large caps have done, a new paradigm kind of price then. So if you hold XRP, then you can understand why my jaw was on the floor, right? I immediately messaged one of my buddies who is a big XRP skeptic, loves to kind of tease me, calling XRP the stable coin that never moves. I was like, dude, An analyst is saying XRP for at least $28 for XRP soon. He kind of replied with a laughing emoji and call me when it's $5. Haters are gonna hate, right? Now, or I should say, but here is the kicker with all of this, right? It's not just 𝗗𝗂𝘀𝗰, right, making bold predictions. Now, as I dug deeper, I found another analyst, 𝗗𝗶𝘀𝗰𝗍𝗀, who's independently threw out the same kind of target around $28 for XRP. Now, this guy was using Elliott wave theory, one of my personal favorites, which is a whole different kind of analysis based on market psychology. Basically, it tracks people's behavior. Now, and what 𝗗𝗶𝘀𝗀𝗋 has pointed out is that XRP's chart, fundamentals and formation kind of looks uncannily similar to how Bitcoin's behaved in previous cycles. And if XRP continues mirroring that pattern, well, it could reach the high 20s as well. Now, when two separate analysts using rather different methods converge on the same number, well, it tells you to be paying attention. It could be a coincidence, but it definitely made me perk up, right? It's like two kind of weather forecasts predicting a huge storm. You pay attention even if the sky looks clear at the moment. But right now, right, well, at least before we kind of start, I guess hyperventilating about, that $28 XRP and planning what color Lambo that we're going to buy, I need to be responsible. I need to be the responsible adult for just a second. And this one might just shock you, but I'm not a financial advisor. And nothing in this video is financial advice. Cryptocurrencies are highly volatile, and you could lose all of the money that you invest. It's important that you do your own research and consult a qualified professional. After all, your investments are entirely your responsibility, and you should know that nothing is ever guaranteed when it comes to investing. Neither I, this channel, nor YouTube are liable for any losses, and this video today is for entertainment and educational purposes only. But seriously, right? I do hope that you take that to heart, because I know it's a disclaimer and I know it's going to be boring, and I do love exploring all of these ideas, but you just need to remember that they are not certainties, right? Nothing is for certain when it comes to crypto. Now, with the reality check in place, let's kind of talk feelings and plans then. How am I handling this information, right? Am I selling my house and going all in on XRP? Heck no. I mean, I'm pretty bullish on XRP's prospects, right? I have been for a while, and I've been, dollar cost averaging, and I have a decent bag of it. But I am also not about YOLOing my life savings onto one prediction, right? I like sleeping at night, you know how that goes, right? In fact, in our Discord, we had people joking, if XRP hits $28, then I'm gonna buy an island and name it XRP land. Others, of course, were, more measured. I'd be happy with $10. Let's get there first. Personally, I'm somewhere in between, right? If we start pushing, double digits, then I'd finally take my wife on a vacation that she keeps kind of poking me about. But I'm also fully aware that it could end up being just a kind of, I guess, fairy tale that doesn't actually pan out. Right? Maybe XRP goes to $5, or maybe it just stays flat for another year, right? It's all possible. So emotionally, I'm excited and cautious. And if that kind of even makes sense, right? Here's a funny thing that happened last night though, right? I was staring at the charts again, as I do, and I get this little itch, right? I was like, should I maybe just buy a few more XRP? You know how it goes, right? Just in case this $28 thing actually really happens. That is the FOMO, and it is real, guys, right? So I hopped onto Kraken Pro. The affiliate link that's in the description, by the way, supports the channel, and that is the exchange that I use for most of my XRP trading. And I had my kind of cursor hovering on the buy button. Full confession though, I did scoop up just a tiny little bit extra. Nothing crazy, just a modest addition to my stack. Enough that I won't be kind of kicking myself if it moons, but not so much that if it goes south, I'm gonna lose sleep if it kind of, doesn't do much. And I only did it because I actually had some spare funds that I was prepared to lose anyway. That is my golden rule for crypto. Only invest what you can really afford to lose if it goes to zero. So no, I'm not remortgaging or mortgaging a house, anything, or selling any of my assets to chase this thing, right? I'm just positioning myself to be pleasantly surprised if lightning strikes a third time. So let's talk about the bigger picture for a second then, because if, and it's a big if, if XRP, were to hit $28, that's not just another bump. It's a seismic event in crypto, right? At $28 per coin, even XRP's large supply, we'd probably be looking at a market capitalization in the trillions of dollars. Now that would likely make XRP the number 2 cryptocurrency by market cap, possibly even challenging Bitcoin, depending on where BTC is at that point. To kind of put that into perspective, at $28, XRP's market cap might be somewhere around $1.4 trillion. But don't quote me on that exactly, but it's somewhere in that ballpark figure. That's kind of like the Apple or the Amazon level valuations. It's kind of huge, right? So can that even happen? Would it likely require a perfect storm, maybe a full-blown crypto bull market where Bitcoin shooting past 100, 200, 300K? Maybe Ethereum is crushing new heights, 10K, 20K, 30K, right? And the whole kind of market cap is kind of exploding as a whole. Also, XRP has one of those advantages, right? Now that it doesn't actually, or at least it didn't fully have in the last cycle, which is clarity, right? At least more clarity, right? At least on the legal front. The long drawn-out SEC versus Ripple saga, essentially concluding recently, both sides has basically called a kind of truce and dropped their lawsuits and appeals, right? That's a big weight off of XRP's shoulders. Remember, right? Part of the reason that XRP didn't break its 2018 high during 2021 was the lawsuit scared a lot of people and exchanges. Now, with the kind of resolution, US exchanges can list XRP again. Institutions might feel safe dipping their toes into it. So fundamentally, things are better, now than they were back in 2021 cycle. However, interestingly and intriguingly, and here is kind of that mysterious twist that I'd promised, even though the legal battle ended, Ripple's CEO Brad Garlinghouse has been oddly silent about it. You'd think after years of fighting the SEC, he would be on Twitter popping the champagne, giving interviews, or at least glad that this thing is over, onwards and upwards. But no, Brad's gone radio silent on the matter. Now this is kind of, this has the community buzzing with theories, right? Some think maybe there's something behind the scenes plan. He's keeping quiet until the time is just right to announce something big. Like maybe a settlement detail or a new partnership, or that kind of, that the legal kind of cloud is gone maybe. Others think that it's just exhausted. He's just exhausted from the whole entire ordeal of kind of letting the legal kind of paperwork finally finalize before commenting on it. Now, I'm not big on conspiracy theories, but it does feel a little bit eerie to not actually hear a peep from him, right? It's kind of like the calm before something. Now, could be nothing, it could be something that, combined with technical breakouts, fuels that kind of big rally. It's just food for thought, right? Now, technical patterns and CEO silence aside, there have also been at least other things that we have to remember the role of the overall kind of market sentiment, right? Because crypto doesn't, move in isolation. If September 2025 rolls around, and say, I don't know, the Federal Reserve does something crazy with interest rates, the stock market crashes, or the whole, crypto market reacts in some way, who knows what could actually happen here and stall any crypto rally, right? XRP included. On the flip side, if Bitcoin goes on an absolute tear and, history is, late of 2025 would be kind of the point where we would see kind of a blow off top for BTC, then capital flowing into crypto could lift XRP like a rising tide lifts all its boats, right? So in that particular scenario, XRP hitting $10, $20, $28 might not be so far-fetched because everything else is inflated. It would just be like XRP in a kind of vacuum, right? It wouldn't just be XRP alone doing this thing. It would be the entire market, top, 30 coins or so. Now, I should also mention one more thing that I came across, which was that there was a recent kind of piece pointing out that something like 94% of XRP holders were in profit right now. So, that's when at least XRP hit $3 recently. So that's kind of almost everyone in the green. So when that happens, something, at least sometimes people, they start taking profits, right? Which can stall a rally. So kind of like what we saw when XRP struggled around $3. A lot of people who held bags from 2021 or who bought in 2022, like myself, you know, were kind of finally actually breaking even, or even better, setting in some profits, right? Now for XRP to push $28, new buyers will have to kind of overwhelm the sellers big time. It's possible, of course, if hype and FOMO go off the charts, pun intended, or if, you know, some big institutional money does indeed come on in, right? Maybe Ripple itself does something crazy like buy XRP in a major banking application or a global payments standard. Hey, one can dream. Right, all right. So enough of me trying to kind of be an amateur economist. Let me kind of break down the kind of personal levels here then, right? I'm getting rid of all the bugs that are trying to eat me alive, of course, at the same time. Now, let's kind of bring back to a personal level where we wind down here, right? Because what do you do with all of this information, right? Well, I can't tell you what to do, in fact, right? You've got to remember the disclaimer, right? I'm not a financial advisor and there's no financial advice here. But I will tell you what I'm going to do, right? I'm holding on to my XRP and, you know, enjoying the ride, right? I've got, you know, my moon bag and that I won't really be touching until I see something crazy like double digits. And I've got a smaller trading stack that I play around with just for fun on the short-term swings. So if we do start, you know, approaching that $28 holy grail, then, you know, you can bet that I'll carefully consider taking some profits off the table. I've also learned the hard way in 2018 and 2021 that bulls make money and bears make money, but pigs, they get slaughtered. The translation is that I won't get too greedy here, right? At the same time, I won't be so skeptical that I miss, you know, the entire party either. It's a balancing act, right? So, one more thing that's for sure is that I'm going to be glued to the charts over the next kind of few weeks or so, and not going to do it alone. I'll be chatting with the community about every twist and turn in the market. If you're not already hanging out with us in the Discord, then you seriously do need to join. It's completely free, educational Discord server, and it's in the description. Like I say, it's totally free. It's a great place to learn and share. And I pop in there pretty much daily. And, you know, when, you know, something like XRP, you know, even hits a move or so, it's kind of like the crypto kind of water cooler. Memes start flying, debates, you know, ignite, and it kind of just is an absolute blast, right? We've got people from all levels in there as well, and we all start to kind of help each other out and stay sane in this volatile market. Also, there's a lot of insights that can be shared in there, bouncing ideas around with other people in there who are in the same space. So yeah, it's a bit of a plug, but it's one that I genuinely believe in, so come and say hi. Since some of you guys also asked me where I trade and how to support the channel, well, I mentioned earlier that I use Kraken Pro for buying XRP. It's one of the exchanges that I trust. I've been looking for a place to trade for a while, and I do have an affiliate link down in the description down below for Kraken. Using it costs you nothing extra, but it does of course help to support the channel here with a few commissions. Totally up to you, there's no pressure. I'm all about transparency, so there's your friendly affiliate disclosure. Anyway, I've been using Kraken Pro for years. It's basically really good because their fees are low, and it kind of I kind of really like the interface. It's really easy to use and you can find what works for you by navigating around. All right, okay, deep breath. What a journey, huh? We've kind of wrapped this up. We started with a wild claim that XRP's chart is repeating history and could potentially hit $28 in the near future. We went back in time to see that indeed XRP has pulled us two-stage kind of rally twice before in 2017, 2018, and 2020 to 2021, and it might just be gearing up to do it again, right? The signs are there, right? The first peak, you know, cool down, and now the clock is ticking towards that second, even bigger peak. Will it actually reach that magical kind of $28? As the saying goes, history doesn't repeat, but it often rhymes. Even if we don't get a rhyme of the past, it'll be a thrill to see how it does play out. Is it $10, $15? But no one really knows. Maybe this cycle is just the grand finale and it truly shoots to the stars. If it does, you can bet that I'm going to be probably freaking out on camera, but in a good way. And if it doesn't, well, we'll dissect what happened and learn from it. Either way, it's going to be fascinating to kind of see that kind of simple chart pattern play out in real time. Such a roller coaster of emotions and debates ahead. It's almost poetic, right? Like a treasure map that could lead to a pot of gold, or maybe to an illusion that teaches you a lesson. This whole experience reminded me why I love crypto. It's never just about the numbers on a screen. It's actually about the narratives, the history, the psychology, the community, the excitement, and yes, a fair bit of a gamble on what the future holds. It's something that we're all in together, swapping theories on the Discord, watching the candles on TradingView, and, ultimately dreaming just a little bit. So, my friends, keep your eyes on the charts. September 2025 is around the corner. Will it be chart truth unleashed, or will it be, left with a big maybe next time? Only time will tell, and I'm here for it with popcorn in hand.